Hey, this is Mike with Family Handyman. Now, the kitchen is a really important place. We all want to see our kitchen bigger and more open. One way to do that that's really trending right now is to add some floating shelves on the walls. We've already got our accent wall and our brand new range hood. We're going to be adding some floating shelves at this level here and one above the refrigerator all the way around the corner. I've got to do some more masking, take some more measurements, and then we'll get building them. I marked out the shelf layout with painter's tape, then found all of the studs, and then determined how long the brackets need to be for each of the shelves. So to build the shelves, I'm using this white oak plywood. I'm going to be cutting this into strips and then building up 3 layers to get the thickness for the shelves I want. Each of the shelves is made up in 3 parts, a top, a bottom, and a filler piece. I ripped the tops and bottoms for each shelf to 10¼ inches, and the filler pieces get ripped to 1 inch narrower than the tops and bottoms. Cutting the middle filler piece 1 inch shorter will line up with the groove we will be cutting in the top and the bottom piece later on. Then I went to the miter saw and cut the shelves to length, leaving them slightly longer than their final dimension. So in order to make these shelves look like they're floating, we're using these really cool brackets by Hover. Now this piece goes against the wall, this gets screwed right to the studs here, and then this one goes on your shelf in a little groove that you're going to make. And then they fit together nice and snug, just like that, to hold them right tight to the wall. So the shelves are made up of these 3 pieces of plywood here. We've got white oak on top and bottom, and a middle piece that's just going to act as a filler. I'm going to cut a rabbet out of the bottom and the top here using the table saw and this featherboard setup. Then I'll switch the setup to cut the rest of the rabbet out. Then I took the top and bottom parts to the table saw and cut a 1 inch by 3/8 inch deep rabbet along the edge of both of those parts for each shelf. To make this cut safely, I set the blade height to 1 inch and the fence to 3/8 inches from the outside of the blade. Then I used a featherboard to support the plywood on edge so I could push it through nice and straight. Then change the table saw to cut the rest of the rabbet out. Once all my parts were cut, I started assembling the shelves. I started with the bottom piece on the table with the rabbet facing up, applied glue, and then fit the filler piece so that it was flush with the rabbeted edge. I put in a few 18 gauge nails to keep it in place and let it dry. I used a compact router with a flush trim bit to flush the front of the shelf. I also hit the edges of the shelf just to make the next layer a little bit easier to align. Then I applied glue on top of the filler piece, then fit the top of the shelf so it is aligned with the rabbet. Then I used a few 18 gauge nails to keep it in place while it dried. So as I'm checking the fit of my groove, I'm noticing I'm a little bit tight and I don't want to force the bracket in to delaminate any of the plies I've got going on. So I'm going to just take it back to the table saw and trim the inside of one of these edges down until it fits really nice. Because I had to do this to all the shelves, I made sure to trim only the bottom side of the grooves so the shelves would still line up when installed. Once the bracket fit the groove, I marked its depth in the groove. I want to keep about 1/64 of an inch plywood proud of the bracket once it's installed. Then I trimmed the back of the shelf to line up using the table saw. With the shelves at their final dimension and all edges flush, I glued blocks in the ends of the grooves so the veneer was fully supported on the sides. And then I applied a pressure-sensitive adhesive-backed white oak veneer to cover all the visible raw plywood ends. Once the veneer is applied, firmly press the veneer in place with a J-roller. You can buy special tools to trim the edge banding, but here's the method I like. Place the veneered surface face down on a flat surface, then cut off the excess with a utility knife. It'll take a few passes. Now we're ready to install the bracket in the shelf. Position the bracket in the groove and fasten it down with 1¼ inch washer head screws through each of those pre-drilled holes. Once the bracket is installed, the next step is to tap threads into the bottom of the bracket through the shelf. To do this, drill a hole in the bottom of the shelf through the shelf bracket. Then with the tap included with the bracket kit, Turn the tap into the hole slowly, making a quarter turn clockwise, then backing it out slightly before making another quarter turn. Repeat this until the tap is completely threaded through the bracket. I tapped 2 to 3 holes for each shelf depending on how long the shelf was. So our shelves are all complete and we're back in the kitchen ready to install them to the wall using the wall portion of the bracket system. Now I've got my height marked, I've got my studs already transferred to my bracket. I just have to drill the holes in the bracket and attach it to the wall through the studs. I drilled 2 3/16 inch holes at each stud mark, one above and one below the bracket's center ridge. They make it really easy to locate these perfectly with a line that goes all the way across that you drill your pilot holes on. Then fasten the wall bracket to the studs using 2 number 8 by 2.5 inch washer head screws at each stud, screwing them through the holes in the bracket and into the stud. Start with one screw, then level the bracket before fastening the rest. With the bracket fastened to the walls, raise the front of the shelf and hook the shelf bracket on top of the wall bracket, then lower the front of the shelf until it clicks into place. Tighten the set screw to secure the shelf to the wall bracket. If it feels like it isn't quite set, use your fist or a rubber mallet to seat the shelf firmly onto the wall bracket. Hover brackets claim to support up to 300 pounds, which is plenty for most kitchen supplies. These are aluminum brackets that are lighter and easier to cut and drill than the steel options that I found. These floating shelves turned out beautifully. They really open up the space and make the whole kitchen feel a little bit bigger. They're certainly better looking than the old kitchen cabinets that were here before. Not to mention, this concept of open shelving is very popular right now. So if it's on your list of your next kitchen project, I wouldn't hesitate to try it. For more great ideas like this, head to familyhandyman.com.